done. How you doing, Nikki?
I'm fine, thank you.
Perfect. I just wanted to start off by asking first. You're not dead, are you? Because I've seen a lot of things from June 2nd this year saying that you were dead online. It seemed to be a hoax.
I know. I was actually on holiday.
I bet that was a big news to you, especially.
It was quite a surprise finding out I was dead, and I didn't feel a thing, just mildly peckish.
It's a big build-up to it. So you haven't been resurrected. It's not time to start lalaism.
Well, why not?
Yeah, yeah. What do you think would be the tenets of lalaism?
Singing, dancing, laughing a lot, telling the truth, looking after each other, falling over, getting up, falling over, getting up, falling over, getting up.
A great way to live your life, I think. So, how did you find your way into the children's entertainment business? What was your background before you became Lala?
I was primarily a dancer. I had my own dance theatre company. I also acted and I sang in pop groups, and I ran a cabaret club. But mostly it was dancing, and then I kind of got a little bit old, and
I refuse to believe that. You're always young.
Well, my knees independently got a little bit old, and dancing became a bit harder. And I was also really fed up of being. I was really successful in every way except for financially, and I was really sick of being poor. So I was kind of just looking for the next thing, and I saw an advertisement in the stage in the trade paper that said artists with stamina required. Then they wanted to cast this for a new children's television program, and then there was this sentence that said people with unusual backgrounds or personalities particularly welcome. So I thought, that's an interesting thing to put in your ad. I wonder who would do that. Well, somebody who might employ me. So that was it. So I answered the ad, and I got an audition, and then gradually, like a lot of people, depleted down to not very many people. And just before, that was in October, I went for my first audition, and then just before Christmas, I got the phone call saying, you've got the job.
Wow.
So, nice Christmas present.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And did you realize when you first got the job, like how influential on your life that would be? How big it would become in your life?
Kind of, yes, I suppose, because I just saw it. It was such a huge opportunity to move out of the life I had been enjoying and into something else. And about halfway through the audition process, we met Anne Wood, who was the co-creator of the program and the CEO of Ragdoll Productions, who made Teletubbies. And I just thought she was the most extraordinary woman, and I really wanted to work for her, with her, and learn from her. And initially it was a 3-year contract, and then because of the success, then we did another 3 years of Teletubbies, by which time I had become fascinated by the minds of young children. And I thought I had more, more to learn and more to do. So I stayed in children's television for probably almost another decade after that, behind the camera.
And even now you work with children. So it's set your whole career, hasn't it?
Yes. I mean, and these days, I think it's like a mixture of the Teletubby years, and then also slightly going back to my roots with more performing for adults and, more theatre.
Yeah, I read that you had a show coming up called Nikkipedia. Is it still coming out?
Yes. Well, we did a few performances in the spring. And we're touring again from the beginning of September to the end of May 2023. Nikkipedia is it's kind of interactive storytelling show. This is for adults. This is definitely for adults and not children. And in the first half, I give the audience kind of options of which stories they'd like me to tell, and they vote, and then I tell the stories. And then in the second half, some are about Teletubbies and some about other bits of life, some showbizy, some very personal, some funny, some really not funny. And then in the second half, I talk a little bit about how important that story sharing thing is, and how, particularly during COVID, when we were all kind of communicating via a screen, says communicating via a screen, that kind of live, that sort of live sharing of stories, and how great that is and how human it is. And he asked the audience to share some of their stories with us as well, me and my sidekick Rob, which was terrifying at first, because I just thought, what if they won't, what if nobody comes forward? But no, in the nicest possible way, we could hardly shut them up. It was great. It was really brilliant. And it just sort of carried on, like even after the show had finished, and this happened every time we performed it, people just hung around.
They wanted more.
Sharing stories for ages afterwards. It's really a fun show.
It's always great to leave them wanting more, isn't it? I'm going to see if I can come see it. I'd love to see Lala doing adult stuff. There's quite a transformation. Hey. I read something online about when you got the role for Lala, and I wanted you to tell me if it was true or if it was rhubarb. Is it true that in order to secure the role as Lala, you had to act as a love-struck table?
I didn't have to.
No?
That was my choice.
Really?
We were asked to prepare a 3-minute piece for 3-year-old children and a 3-minute piece humorous for adults. And from a previous dance show, I happened to have a plywood table. I'd made a show that was it was called What Is This Thing Called? And it was like kind of photo love story with a bit of a twist. And one of the scenes was the featured couple going dating. And I was the table and my colleague Rachel played the chair. And we were their favorite restaurant, so they kept coming back to us. And then we'd sort of hold up, we had like underneath my tablecloth, I had like a cinema screen and a rural theme where they could go to the cinema and picnic and stuff. It was really stupid, but very funny. And I just thought, oh, maybe I'll juice something up about that. So I did, and I wrote this thing about being, yes, I am a table, I am in love with the chair, but the chair doesn't care for me. And then there was a whole thing talking to the child about, well, what am I going to do? Like that. One performance only, 26 years ago, and I still remember the tune.
Yeah. It's very impressive. Very, very impressive. I'd have given you the job for that. I read as well that online, when you started filming the Teletubbies, when you finally got the job and the whole production started running, the paparazzi and the media was a bit over the top with their pursuit of photos of like you out of costume and you also going back to your private life, hanging around. What was your experience of the paparazzi and media like at that time?
It was absolute hell, actually. It was really awful. And we weren't expecting it. We were just a bunch of puppets, And they were going through our bins and hassling our families and in the long grass and coming over in helicopters. And it was absolutely ludicrous. And I remember saying, am I allowed to swear?
Like you had to become Lala now?
No, now, because I want to tell you the story.
Oh, yes, swear away. Feel free.
So I remember saying to Anne one morning that's right, the Sun printed a footer saying, do you know a Teletubby? Do you have a story about a Teletubby? If so, ring this number. Which is just horrifying because it didn't have to be true. People could dish any kind of dirt. And I said to Anne, so what will happen, Anne, if you open the paper tomorrow and it says, I fucked Lala in drug-fueled orgy? What will happen? Will you be standing by us, or will you go, well, we always knew she was a wrong one? What? What? And she just laughed in a kind of, oh, Nikki, you are funny sort of way. But it was really quite harrowing. And it went on for ages. And you just couldn't do anything. You couldn't go out because there'd just be there'd be press there. It made me think, why on earth anybody actually courts that or wants that in their life? I have no idea. And then, of course, what happened was in the September, Princess Diana died. And then we were like that, bang, yesterday's news. So, which was a relief, really. I mean, sorry for her.
Yeah.
But great for us.
If you said that back in the day, those same newspapers would have read, Lala says it's a good thing that Princess Diana died. That's what the media would have been like back then.
I know.
Did
and
you
of course,
feel...
I don't mean that it was a good thing.
No,
I don't
I know.
mean that it was a good thing at all. But that was the effect that it had. And of course, and even though the paparazzi were sort of complicit in that death, it still didn't seem to make an awful lot of difference. It did, but just the people in general who have to put up with this kind of thing, in a more realistic, proper famous people, they don't seem to have it any easier.
Did you feel like in your private life you had to start acting a certain way to act more child friendly than you were, just so that you didn't accidentally set off the media and the press?
No, well, during that period, we just sort of hid away, really. Got on with our work, kept our heads down. And then afterwards, just went back to being normal.
Yeah.
And forgot about us. And that was fine, because that's what we were expecting in the first place, just a bunch of kids' puppets,
Yeah. Especially on a kids show. I read another thing online, which you can tell me if it's true or not. If you had visitors coming into the set, they would have to be blindfolded on their way, so they didn't know where it was. Is that true?
That is true.
Wow, so it was like a huge production.
Well, there were a couple of reasons for that, but the main one was that, and again, the newspaper actually did print a map of where Teletubbyland was. We wanted to keep it secret because Anne and Andy and other people in the production team very sensibly realized that people would just go, oh, let's go. And that is what happened when the Sun printed this map. A few families did turn up like a day out, not really realizing it's a place of work and people have to get on with things and it's not safe. And also, if you bring young children to look at the Teletubbies that they've seen on the screen, that they imagine to be the same size as them, and then they turn up and we're these gigantic things, and then they take their heads off and they're covered in sweat. I mean, that's just, you don't want your little child seeing that. So that was part of the reason.
Yeah, I was surprised to learn how big those costumes were, because I thought they were kind of human-sized costumes. But I think Tinky Winky was 10 feet tall, or close to that. How tall was your costume of Lala?
8 foot. From aerial to foot, yes.
Wow, that's a lot of costume. What was it like? What was the whole costume like inside and controlling it? Did you control the mouth and the eyes?
Yes, we had mouth and eyes in our hands. So, which made holding things kind of awkward, because you couldn't just sort of like stop talking and blinking just because you were holding a bowl of custard. Yeah, it was tough. It was so unbelievably claustrophobic and sweaty. I talk about it quite a lot in the book because you couldn't get away with it, and it had some really peculiar effects on us. We did kind of get used to it, but really that first year when we were so up against it, and we were in the costume for way longer than would be allowed these days. These days it's really strict. Those kinds of things, you're in it for 20 minutes and then you can come out and at least get a breath of air.
Yeah.
Whereas in those days, no, it was just like, you're in until we say you're not in. And then if we moaned at all, well, I mean, we did moan, of course we moaned. But yes, they just say, well, nobody knows who you are, so we could always get someone else to do it.
And of course, you were filming outside, weren't you, for most of it, in the sunlight, hot, this big, thick costume. How did you see out of the costume?
Through the mouth. So we saw through, so the mouth is kind of here. So obviously some distance away from it, what's not like it was close to, because the head was so big.
Yeah.
And then, so that was the kind of gap that you were looking through. And then there was the mechanism that worked, the mouth, metal was in the way, so in front of the mouth hole. And then because that was made of metal, and if you shine a big light in front of a camera, then it would glint. Like, yeah, like Goldie. For those who remember.
Yeah, just does.
And so then inside and on the other side of the metal, but before you got to the little letterbox thing, was black gauze. So you had like metal, black gauze, small letterbox.
So that means... So if you were speaking as your character, every time the mouth closed, it would just be blackout. You wouldn't see a thing.
Yeah.
That's difficult. That must be difficult to work with. I read that there was concerns about a CO2 buildup inside the costume every now and again. Is that true?
I don't remember anybody being concerned about that, frankly.
This was before the days of health and safety. Is it true that the interior parts, because I assumed it would be filmed on a set, but the interior was filmed inside the actual Teletubby hub, was it?
Yeah, the Teletubby Dome, the Tubbytronic Superdome. Yeah, over the hills and far away. I mean, it was really Teletubbyland. It existed exactly like it looks on the screen, with the hills and the windmill and the big dome. So we were actually in the big dome.
That almost makes it more magical to me, that it was actually real.
Yeah, me too.
I was researching obviously for this interview, and I saw that they'd now covered the dome and everything, and they've dug it out, and they've mainly because of people like you were speaking about showing up to try and see what it's like now. So they've had to cover it all up, and now it's gone. And
well, it was a proviso of the planning permission in the first place. Was that they gave the company planning permission to build this thing, as long as they put it back to nature afterwards.
Yeah.
So it was always going to go that way.
Yeah. It's a shame, but as you say, it was going to happen. So what was...
It was pretty tacky by the end, to tell you the truth.
Like even by the time you'd finished filming, it was kind of done. What was the usual filming day for you like when you were filming the Teletubbies?
We start at 8, so yeah, generally get on set about 7:45, and then work, have lunch, work, go home 6, sometimes 7.
Wow,
long day.
Yeah, especially working out in the hot sun. I imagine it was quite a lot. Did you get along with your fellow actors playing all the Teletubbies and all of the cast members and directors and everything?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
I'm sounding like a journalist now. Tell me about drama. Give me something for the headlines, please, Nikki.
Yeah. No, I haven't got any. I have got no bitching to do. You know, I mean, occasionally you just kind of, you were tired and hot and sweaty and everything, you know, you might rub somebody up the wrong way, but there was just like, and then you have a bit of space, and then you friends again. We were all grown-ups. It was a really happy, I mean, when I was writing the book, I got in touch with as many people as I possibly could to say, I'm writing a book about making Teletubbies. And is there anything you really don't want me to say? Is it okay if I mention you by name? All of that kind of thing. And everyone just went, oh, brilliant, we're so happy you're doing that. Great. And they said things like, I mean, this was like almost everyone would say, oh, 25 years ago, and I still have not enjoyed myself at work as much as I did doing that show. It's really like, it makes me, oh, what happy days. People look back with a real kind of sense of warmth and gratitude for doing it. It was really fun. I mean, I always used to say, anytime that you're not in the suit, it is absolutely fantastic. It's the best job in the world. And then so the payoff is that you've got to locked in this monstrous thing, you know, make up for the fact that you're getting paid to be in this lovely spot with some great people.
I'm glad to hear that. I loved the Teletubbies growing up. When I was growing up, it wasn't a real conflict between shows, but in our hearts, it was Teletubbies and Tweenies, and everyone would choose their favorite one, and I always went with Teletubbies. And I'm not trying to flatter you, but my favorite was Poe. So,
Goodbye.
thank you so much, Nikky Smedley, everyone. Nikky Smedley. No, I think the only real controversy that I read about was Dave Thompson when he was fired, was allegedly over his interpretation of the character being inappropriate was the word that was used. But then you see other news things will go, it's because he was acting like the character was gay, or it's because he was acting effeminate. Do you remember the conversations around that at the time? Or did you just show up and suddenly you had a different Tinky Winky?
No, well, here's my experience was that when Dave was playing Tinky Winky, we would quite often get up to take 6 or 7 like that. When Simon took over, it suddenly became unusual to get above 2, maximum 3 takes. And that's important when you're in that kind of big giant thing, you know, running up and down hills. I had no idea that they were going. I knew that Anne wasn't entirely happy with Dave's interpretation. Just hearsay, really. But I didn't know anything about that they were going to sack him. And I think the way they did it was insensitive at the very least.
I hopefully will be speaking to Dave Thompson soon. I was wondering if you had any questions that you would like me to ask, or what you think I should ask Dave Thompson.
Ooh, it's a bit of a wild card.
I know.
Well, no, not really, because I've kind of heard what Dave has to say quite often in various interviews and various formats. So I don't feel like there's any mystery, really.
Yeah, that's fair. It was, though, the show was like surprisingly diverse. You don't realize when you watch it as a kid that it was diverse. Like the characters were diverse. Dipsy was the Teletubbies represented the people playing the Teletubbies, and so Dipsy was a Jamaican male, and Poe was a Cantonese little lady, and was that? I assume that obviously that was intentional going into it to be representing.
I mean, it's not really for me to say because I wasn't in charge of the casting, but I think definitely the casting of John was because Anne wanted to have that Caribbean influence and Caribbean have it represented. She's kind of good like that, you know, because even like the children in the films, she was always after, oh, we've got to make sure that we try and represent as many different kinds of children as possible. With Poi, I think that was probably less deliberate. What she struggled with casting Poe was finding someone who was small and cute, but also not kind of fey or twee or sad.
Yeah.
And of course, Poi's really, really up at it and feisty, and she had that character. So I think, although she was very glad, of course, and Poi and Anne between them deciding to bring some Cantonese into the Poe character, brilliant. Yeah, I think she was a real lucky find.
She was. I'm going to ask you the question now that people tend to ask you, and it's like difficult to answer. What was your favorite memory filming on the Teletubbies?
Ooh, I thought you were going to ask me, is it hot in those costumes? But I guess we've covered that. That's always what I think of as the question. No. What was my favorite filming moment? Do you know, I think probably the very, very, very first sketch was a Lala, just me. And it was based on Mary, Mary, quite contrary. and basically wandering about the hills with a watering can, watering flowers, while the voice trumpet sang the song. And I think because I didn't know I could do it. I did think I might die.
There's dedication to the craft for a kids show, risking your
Really,
life to be entertaining for kids.
Can I even do this? I don't know. I mean, because you never have everything all together, the hills and the heat and the cameras and everything, until you do. So although you've rehearsed, it's not the same as when you're actually filming. So I think probably just finding out that it was possible and that I could do it and that everybody thought it was good, that was great. And then apart from that, the ongoing thing was it was always really satisfying when you made the crew fall about laughing.
Now here comes the curveball question. What was your worst experience filming on the show?
Ooh, my worst experience. I really hated Tubby Bye-Byes. Because Poe and Tinky Winky, they had a hill each, and me and Dips were squished in behind one hill, and we were kind of on two kinds of slope, and it was really difficult to hide. And then to pop up from that angle, you couldn't. It was really tough on the neck. That was really hard. We did it over and over and over and over. And of course, also, there's no real facility for the being funny. It's just, you just got to do the thing. So you can't add anything to make it. Yeah, I really hated that.
Yeah, and for it to be two of the biggest characters as well behind that one hill, I can imagine why that would be difficult.
We kept getting our ears tangled up and knocking each other out and bowling down the hill.
Do you remember when you found out that the show was coming to an end? Did you know that it was going to be the last series?
Well, we had several false endings. In the beginning, it was only a 3-year contract. And then because it was so ginormously successful, the BBC wanted Ragdoll to make more and didn't want to really. And then they twisted her arm, twisted her wallet. And even then they wanted her to make more. And she said, no, we'll make 365 in total. And that's one for every day of the year. And that's enough for our demographic. And then we also made Teletubbies everywhere at Pinewood. So yeah, we had another 3 years, and we knew it was going to be another 3 years. And it was funny. And I've written about this as well, because
So there's the mistake I made. I forgot to upgrade my Zoom account to the Pro version for longer calls. It was in my preparation notes. I was supposed to upgrade to the Pro version, and I forgot to. So I ended up basically hanging up on Nikky Smedley after 40 minutes. Yeah, that's embarrassing. That's really embarrassing. But Nikky has been a good sport about it. I emailed her, she responded since. I think we're still homies. Obviously, this wasn't intentional. You can see from the sheer exasperation on my face the second that I noticed that I've just nosed up the ending of the interview. I'm so embarrassed. But despite my embarrassment, despite me nosing it up, the rest of the interview is still good. So run it.
And it was funny, and I've written about this as well, because I don't know what I was expecting at the end, with a parade or something. But I think it was partly because everybody's job finishes at different times. We finish performing and we can go away, but the director still has to edit things. And then the people, all the sparks, have to take all the electricity cables out of Teletubbyland, and they had to take the costumes. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of like there wasn't just an everybody finishes on this day.
Yeah.
So yes, it was odd.
And do you remember the final day when you were filming? Was it sad?
Please. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Do you remember your last day filming? Was it sad?
Do you know, I don't really remember.
You know what? That's fair. No. So once you once you finished as the show ended,
Tired actually, probably just so desperate to go to bed.
there were long days and it was for a long time.
Yeah.
Once you'd finished filming as the Teletubbies and you hung up the suit of Lala, what was life like for post Teletubbies for you?
The most ridiculous kind of like the Teletubby version of a first world problem, and it happened every year, was that because when you're on site, there's food. There's food lying about. There's a bowl of fruit and there's some vegetables, and you get fed lunch, and then you get so full and then tired and you can't be bothered to eat dinner, so you just go to bed. So then when you come back out into the real world and you're just like, I'm hungry.
Don't you know? You should have kind of brought the head with you into restaurants. Don't you know who I am? Bring me food.
No, well, they wouldn't get through the door most of the time. There's like, people would say, oh, will you come and do this? And will you come and do this? Or in costume. And say, no, I'm too big. And they go, oh, okay, you're too big. But no, literally too big, won't fit. I'll get in. Well, and then the lovely thing was when it was our 10th anniversary in 2007, and we had a bit of a global tour. And that was the cutest thing, because then we were all back together again. It was so lovely to see one another, and gadded about New York and Singapore and Amsterdam and Paris and stuff, tubbying in the world, like released from Tubbyland out into the world. It was hilarious.
It's nice that they remember you as Lala. I know now they've made a remake of the Teletubbies, but they still, at that point, they still see you as your Lala. That's your character, your Lala. Were you invited to work? I am the
La.
You are the La. Were you invited to work on the new Teletubbies?
I was. Not as La, but and I was really thrilled about this. It was through Sue James, who was our series producer, and I think she just chanced upon Maddie Darrell, who's one half of Darrell McQueen, who the production company who make the new version. And they were talking about, blah, 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 blah. And Sue said, you need Nikky Smedley to come along and just kind of get you going and keep you straight. So, and they went, all right then. And asked me to come along and do it. And it was wonderful. And so I was involved in the casting and just helping the performers. And because it's strange, they have to kind of be like the characters that we were, but also they're different performers. So they have to bring their own thing to it as well. So there has to be a bit of space for that. And they were great. It was really fun to do. No, I was really thrilled about it, but weird.
Yeah.
Weird to get used to. Whenever I see a picture of Lala, that was always me. And then it wasn't.
Yeah.
And like theatrical. I can't. It was, I felt more emotional than I thought I was going to. That sense of kind of, but there you go. That's a grown-up world, isn't it?
Yeah, it must have been like your child growing up and then moving out, and it's like, that was my child. Oh, there goes my child out into the world.
No.
All right, thank you, everyone. Nikky Smedley, everyone. Thank you. There was a couple of myths or things that I assumed to be questionable. I thought I'd ask you about them and see if you knew if it was true or not. At the time, when you were filming on set, there were giant rabbits, obviously for scale, because of you being giant, you couldn't have little tiny rabbits. Is it true that they were like a menace breeding on the set, and you'd catch them and then you'd have to stop filming and film again, split them up and film again?
Yeah, they weren't actually breeding because they were all girls, but they still wanted to shag. Yes, that is true. It'd be like you over the field, and you just get to camera to the cut. What? They go, yeah, fucking rabbits. Like, that did happen.
Oh,
that did happen. But the best thing about the rabbits was that because we're in the countryside, and our rabbits, our giant rabbits, they had their own kind of giant hutch on the edge of Teletubbyland. But when you got there early in the morning, like the normal sized rabbits, the natural, outside the hutch looking at them like this, like, I told you. Like, look, gods. Marveling.
Yeah, I didn't expect that to actually be true. That's wild. So somewhere on some cutting room floor, there's just hours and hours of rabbits parading on the set of the Teletubbies.
No, we were on it kind of pretty quick once they started. No, stop.
Another one was, so there was an episode of the show that got, I wouldn't say banned, but removed from showing on TV, which was the one with the giant lion and the giant bear cutouts that went across the set. Do you remember this? Do you remember
we had the lion. It wasn't one episode. The lion and the bear were kind of an interlude that happened, and it was supposed to be very gamey. And it was just a playful thing, but it was too scary. I think there was something in, whether it was the music, whether it was the way the puppets moved, whether it was the voiceover, because it was Eric Sykes and Penelope Keith, I think, did the voices. But no, that was just, it came back, the kids weren't enjoying that particular segment, so they took that out and put Bo Peep in instead, which was much funnier. Yeah,
probably for the best.
No drama, it doesn't work, put something else in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how the industry works. The final myth that I wanted to ask you about was the Teletubbies designed to brainwash kids? Are you why I'm like this? Because that's what you see everywhere. The Teletubbies was designed to brainwash kids, and it was designed to teach them this thing and make them think this way. Not true, is it?
No, of course it's not true. No, it was designed to entertain, to educate, although a lot of people did, because the education was at the deep level and not in a kind of Sesame Street ABC way. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's just not what we did. To be full of love, to give them a chance to expand their imaginations. No, it was just, we just wanted them to have a lovely time. That's all. There was no.
I thought I'd
ask. What do we do with all those brainwashed children?
I don't know. Maybe you're starting lalaism, right? Maybe. I just thought I'd ask. Those are the main things on the internet that were going around. I thought no one better to ask than Lala, right? Than the La.
Mind you, I'm dead, so what do I know?
That's true. That was a good way to start this interview, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Just, are you dead? Is there some Weekend at Bernie's thing going on? Someone from Ragdoll. Yeah, you know what? Unfortunately, you know how I'm not very professional? Like, as in I misspelled your name in our first communication, and then I booked our interview at 4:30 in the morning. I've made another error, which is that I forgot to get the pro version of Zoom, so this interview is just running out. You get sort of a 40-minute limit. I'm not very professional. I'd love to do this again sometime, if that's okay.
Yeah, I am very professional.
You are. You've been naught but professional this whole time. So is there anything that you'd like to plug to people who might see this?
Yeah, my show, Nikkipedia, and even more so, my book, Over the Hills and Far Away, which is out on August the 10th, as you said. And everybody so far seems to really like it. It's nice, I think. You know, one of the reasons I wanted to write it was because the world had just gone a bit shit.
Nikki! And that's where the call ended. Mid-sentence, it looked like I hung up on her. Fortunately, I've spoken to Nikki since then. I think we're still homies. I hope so. But I'm going to wrap up the interview the way that she was going to wrap it up. If you want to see more from Nikki Smedley, she writes and performs children's stories as Nikky Smedley the Storyteller, which you can see as the first link in the description. If you want to go see her live comedy show, Nikkipedia, you can go get tickets in the second link in the description. And you can now pre-order her autobiography, Over the Hills and Far Away, My Life as a Teletubby, which will be released on August 10th. And you can get that at the third link in the description. But if you want to see more from the idiot, you can see me at twitch.tv/Myobi. I stream 3 times a week doing stuff like this. Oye, soy Dora! Do you know that Rasputin had a 12-inch cock? Wow! Yeah, very funny. All right, I'll see you next time. Ta-ta now.